How do founders split equity?
Okay.
Now, there again, I've seen iterations of this where a certain founder has a bulk majority, a certain co-founder, and it's always a very difficult topic to talk about, especially if you're a first-time founder.
Yeah.
Walk me through Paul. Walk me through what you did with Paul and whoever you had. But more than that, what are the basics of how to split equity, knowing what you know, Dex?
Okay. It's a little confidential, but no.
No, just we don't have to go talk about cap tables. But
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So essentially, with Kalibrr, I didn't join as a co-founder. So I started as an advisor, then as an employee, and then once I committed, essentially I earned
you vested
more and more equity share.
God,
right?
I didn't know this. I thought you were there from day one as a co-founder.
Yeah, no, and I also didn't know what I was doing. This is my first time in a tech company.
Got it.
It turned out okay. It turned out really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's two dimensions when you're thinking about co-founder equity.
Okay.
First is economic interest.
All right.
The second is control.
Okay, let's dissect those two. What's economic interest and control?
So economic interest is essentially how much it's how much you the proceeds and the value of your share. So it's essentially like how much
of the pie do you own?
You own, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the way to think about the reason why I distinguish it is what the value that you bring as a co-founder should be commensurate with your split of the pie. Okay.
Got it.
So this is not about the other. I'll talk about control in a bit, but whatever the context, whether if it's like Eastern or Western, there's a
difference.
I think that's what the difference is.
Yeah.
What you bring to the table, like if, Alexis is younger than I am, but he brings a whole lot of influence and a whole audience with him that helped us build Swarm. So we actually had very similar equity splits between me, Alexis, and Aaron. I'm like,
wow,
almost twice.
That's the YC model, almost.
Exactly. Now, I think that, again, it comes down to like how much value you place on what each person brings to the table. And I think that can be objective and it can be measured. Now, where there's a very different like YC view versus a, say, Eastern view that I see more Eastern with, more prevalent with Eastern founders, Eastern investors, is there's a clear, they want to see clear leadership.
Yep.
Right?
Where the buck stops.
Exactly. So it's both.
Whose head is on the line when the shit hits the fan?
And I think exactly. So from an investor point of view, like many of the Singaporean-based VCs, institutional investors, will want to see that somebody has enough equity shares such that they can drive the decision-making of the organization.
Correct.
And that they can be held accountable.
Gotcha.
Right? So I think, the values that are at play here is I think in like Eastern markets, it's more common to have authoritarian top-down leadership decision structures. So I think that that's kind of what investors want to see. And I think that's in some ways the expectation. People are more cool with that.
Correct.
In this market.
In the Southeast Asian market. Whereas in YC, it's an equal split across the board.
That's correct.
As well.
I think that there's the caveat around that is like if somebody is like very, very junior, but has somehow become a co-founder, it's understandable that you won't be equal split. That's why I said, it's around economic contribution. But I think that it's more common in Western markets, like in the Valley, to see kind of democracy and that the asymmetric ownership will lead to conflict.
Absolutely.
Right?
And there will always be conflict, by the way. I don't care what your splits are.
Yeah.
There will be conflict, and we will be talking about that later. But I want to understand now. Okay, so let's talk about the pros and cons of each. Because you've seen, technically in Kalibrr, this is more the Eastern side because you came through and you earned your equity through vesting. So again, for those people who don't know, vesting is basically the process of you earning shares or shares of stock for you to be able to have equity in the company.
Right.
That is done through tenure, obviously, and in great work. That needs to happen both. Whereas in a equal equity thing, there's still vesting. By the way, this is a fail-safe option because at the end of the day, everybody comes forward with the best foot forward.
Yeah.
But the real game happens once we start hustling.
Right. Exactly.
And not everybody makes the cut because at the end of the day, some people will fights will happen every time. It doesn't matter what startup you have, and that's where the foundational pieces that you mentioned
Yes.
before the break come into play really. Because again, we've seen the bad side of this, the good side of this. But now I want to understand, Dex, bro. In your point of view, what do you think are the pros and cons of each model? The Western model, equal split, a nice even pie, and then you have this Southeast Asian or Asian model where there's a main dude, and that's where the guillotine hangs.
Yeah. It comes down to the values of the founding team themselves, right?
Okay.
So in the case between me, Aaron, and Alexis, and actually I had saved actually a very big reserve to pull on a fourth co-founder, which I did, Sabrina. She actually led, and she was the lead sales engineer for Slack for the enterprise segment.
And that's important. You need to have that extra pie, so 25% across the board for your ESOP.
That's
so
right.
that everybody that works with you at the start gets a piece of the pie, the same way you did it for Kalibrr at the start.
Exactly. And actually what I did was I had a larger ESOP pool to get somebody in at the co-founder level.
Nice.
So, that was a deliberate kind of pre-envisioned, pre-planned thing. So at the end of the day, we're not exactly even. Like I have a little bit more, but not a lot more, right?
Not like massive to the point that you can trump them out.
Yeah. Well, my personality-wise, I couldn't. They're both afraid of me. When I can be scary when I need to be.
It's the gray hair, man. That's it.
And I think that I say that jokingly, but I was their former, boss. Their, I think that if I have clear leadership, so the control issues, it wasn't there. I listened to them; they feel valued by me and validated, but they know that when it comes time to make a decision and there's like differences of opinion, they will defer to me to make that decision. And ultimately, they know I will be accountable for that. My ass is on the line for that. So that's kind of like the give and take for leadership. So I think for us, I wanted to motivate them enough to feel equally to feel that they had equal ownership over this endeavor as me. But also I do know in the circumstances between us that when conflict happens, they will defer to me. When a split decision needs to be made, when a conflict or disagreement is to be had.
Thank you so much for watching Hustleshare on YouTube. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel to get more content like this. And to get the full audio episodes of Hustleshare and Founders Only, subscribe to our podcasts at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.